Hey, how about that? Cowabunga, dude. What an awesome video to get us going here. Big shout out to Brian Ward. That's our official new Geek Buddies video intro into the show. You know, I'm trying to make everything on the Outlaw Nation look as professional as possible. And people like Brian Ward, Jake Yakabetta, who help us do so many of the graphics and the video graphics for this channel, deserve so much credit for that. I sent it to the boys, or the buddies, shall I say, earlier last week, and they absolutely loved it. So we wanted to start our show off that way as well. So I am John Roca. I'm a writer, producer, and host here in Los Angeles, California.
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And I am Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor, where you may have seen me on Silicon Valley, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and 911.
Oh, and if this is your first time, this is the
Geek
Buddies! Hey!
There we go. That's how we start the show usually, but I think we were all caught up with that video, or at least I was, and so it didn't start out off fully correctly like we normally do, but we got there eventually. For those of you who are new to the show, thank you so much for taking a chance here on the Geek Buddies and downloading us either in audio or podcast form, because we come in both. For those of you who are coming back, thank you so much for coming back every week to enjoy our unique takes, and some would even say refreshing takes. Yeah, that's right. I said that. On the world of entertainment. We love doing it every week and talking about all kinds of things. For those, so let me tell you how the show breaks down. Each of us brings up a geek news item. That's 3 of them in total. We talk about them amongst ourselves and for you all, give our thoughts, points of views, etc. Then we take a quick break and jump into our main topic. And today's main topic is Shannon McClung's MCU rewatch, hashtag MCU rewatch. He has listed out his top 22, the MCU films, all ranked for himself. How many are there? 24?
23.
23, sorry. All 23 MCU films he's ranked for himself, and Mike and I are going to tear that list apart in the main topic today. But
it's going to get brutal. It's going to get real brutal, guys.
Yeah, but first let me check in with everybody. Mike and Shannon, how's this whole thing going, this self-isolating, self-quarantine? What are you guys doing to kind of like pass the time or to fill the time during the days?
Go for it, Mike.
What am I doing? What am I not doing? I'm watching TV. I'm reading books. I'm doing nothing. It's okay. You know, like I think I keep going, and this seems to be the case for a lot of people. I keep going back and forth between kind of feeling like I'm on an extended vacation and then having like the existential dread of everything that's happening in the world kind of going back and forth. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I'm doing these like zombie runs every other morning because with the gyms closed, I've been doing these runs around West Hollywood, and my friend gave me this app, Zombies Run. It's kind of like a story that kind of goes along as you're running and the zombies chase you to make you sprint. But I was doing this run this morning, and in the story, the runner is like separated from the guy who he talks to in the tower. And the guy is like having this big talk with him about like what life is like in a zombie apocalypse. So I'm running through West Hollywood with like no cars anywhere. And he's like, yeah, life's never going to be the same after this. Like you just miss the way things were. And you wonder if things are ever going to go back to what you knew, or is this a whole new world? Like, can we ever fully recover from this? And I was like, is this still talking about the zombie thing, or is this like what's really happened? I got very confused. So back and forth between just going completely batshit insane and then just relaxing and binging a ton of geeky shit like everybody else is.
Yeah. What about you, Shan?
Yeah, well, along with doing my MCU rewatch, which has taken up the last 23 nights, I am lucky that I am still getting to see my girlfriend. She's working from home, so she's there. So she'll occasionally come over to my place. I'll go to hers. We'll go for walks, go for very, very long walks. Sometimes I get up to 15,000 steps a day. There is a local coffee shop that I frequent that I am trying to go to just to support those local businesses during this time. I usually go to the coffee shop first to get my cold brew and oat milk. One day I am going to learn the lesson not to start with the coffee, because I'll get about 2 miles away from my home and then trouble starts a brewing, as it were. Okay. So I'll be like,
you wanted to go there. All right, cool.
Hey, let's get real. Let's be honest. It happens. And businesses are not open, especially to let you use their facilities. I actually, for any of you that live in Burbank, I actually walked from my place all the way down to the Whole Foods and picked up a 6-pack of beer, amongst other things, And I was walking with this very heavy bag when trouble started to brew, and I'm like, oh God,
oh wow,
this might be the day that I don't make it.
I think maybe you should stop walking. It seems like that's the lesson. Seems to be you should take a car everywhere you go, and have extra bags apparently for emergencies. So it feels like that's the way to go with your situation.
You actually should drive your car. Like every couple of days, you should drive your car. And
I drive my car every day. I drive my car every day, half an hour at least.
I drive my car around because I have clocked every place that there's still a Starbucks that you can get into. Like most of the Starbucks have closed, but like the Starbucks that are inside a grocery store, which is still open because it's an essential business, those tend to be open. And there's a couple drive-through Starbucks that are open. So I have sort of built my weekly schedule around still getting Starbucks at least 2 or 3 times a week just to feel somewhat normal.
Right, you'd rather support the giant faceless corporation than a local place. I get it.
Wow.
Have you met me?
Mike, giant faceless corporation Vogel.
To be fair, they pay more and they offer more content, so I got no issue with that. I mean, we do that. We've been kind of I've been convincing her to go to El Segundo every single chance we get, because now without the traffic, it's like 20 minutes to get over there. It's not a big deal at all. And then we'll walk to the beach and walk back. Obviously, they've shut down all the areas to go down onto the beach or near the beach, but you walk all the way there and back, and it's a nice little workout for us. Plus, there's a mom and pop coffee shop there that only has like 2 other coffee shops in the area that they are behind, and so we go and grab a little bit of breakfast there, little food there, sit out on the patio next to City Hall. They have like these little mini tables you can sit at, and of course everyone keeps distance, no one is sitting next to each other on the tables. Have a little bit of food, then take our walk for an hour and drive on back. So it's kind of that way of doing that, kind of breaking up the monotony. But yes, I also later on in the afternoon will get in my car and drive half an hour, 45 minutes just to get out of the house, just kind of break the monotony. Last night, 11 o'clock at night, I went to S&K Donuts. They close at 10. I didn't know that on a weeknight. Well, lesson learned. So
now is anybody
is
anybody howling where you guys are at night?
Howling? At night?
So yeah. Sounds weird. I know.
Yes, it does.
So in West Hollywood, where I live, and also I believe over in like Silver Lake Echo Park, it must be burners. So a thing that happens at Burning Man every year, which will not happen this year because we just found out Burning Man 2020 was canceled. But what usually happens is like when the sun hits the mountains right around sunset, like right when it's setting, everybody like goes outside of their camps and stuff, and everybody kind of howls and cheers and yells, and it's like this big communal moment. Cool. And I don't know if burners have started this or whatever, but my friend kind of told me the other night, and I poured myself whiskey, and at 8 o'clock, I went up the stairs to where our roof is on our building. Yeah. And it's beautiful because we have the cleanest air in the world right now, and you can see all the way to downtown, and it's gorgeous. And people all around the city are like cheering and howling and yipping at 8 o'clock at the exact same time. And it's actually kind of awesome.
Okay.
It's with everything going on where you sort of feel disconnected from everyone and everything. Yeah. It's so quiet. There's not a lot of traffic out, so you can hear everything. And you kind of go up. I went up on the roof. I kind of sipped my drink, and people were just yipping and howling, and I howled, and I've done that for the past couple of nights, and it's been kind of nice.
Just letting it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I respect that. You sometimes you got to get it off your chest. You got to get it off your chest and relax.
As my favorite princess / queen from a giant faceless corporation says, sometimes you just got to let it go.
Oh, I think that's a direct shot at you, Shannon. I don't know if I would take that. I think that's a direct shot at you. Just saying. For me, we found out when we went to walk at the Olympic Park. The park on Olympic Boulevard. It's over there. I can't remember the name but we had I think Eric Rogers' 1 year holds 1 year anniversary, 1 year birthday there, I think, at the park. And we took a walk around. It was Josh Haber's kids. I can't remember, but we went to that park yesterday, and apparently it's 7 p.m. every night. People at a complex that are above a clinic or a center or hospital, they go out and they clap for 2 minutes, sending a positive message down to the people who are working either, I think it's across the street or below them, in the hospital center that's there. So pretty positive reactions there to discover as we're walking around. You know, it was like, oh, what do we do? Well, we're not in a situation where we can do that, but I know that that's happening across the world in many places as well. So people showing a little bit of support for people who are on the front lines and stuff. So that's positive stuff in the grand scheme of things. So anyway, let's get into geek news item. Let's entertain you with our geek and take your mind off this stuff and get into some geeky stuff. Who's going to start with us? Who's going to start first for today?
Well, that would be me.
Okay.
So Rebecca Rubin, who writes for Variety, announced on Monday that Trolls World Tour, the sequel to 2016's animated musical, landed the biggest debut for a digital release ever. Now, Universal didn't actually provide any statistics to say what the actual numbers were, but they did say it was the #1 title across major on-demand video platforms such as Amazon, Apple, and Fandango, and that it also had the biggest opening day and weekend for a digital title, generating approximately 10 times more than the next largest traditional premium home video release. And it also got released in like 21 drive-thrus across the nation. If the drive-thru theaters that are still open. So yeah, I mean, people are wondering now, could this be the way that some future releases could go once this is all over? I have my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Well, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks, this idea of which one of these big major films is going to go down to video on demand and streaming. And we certainly had that with Trolls World Tour kind of being the first test case. I think Michael mentioned that a couple weeks ago, being a test case to see what the results might be in that way. But in the article, I read a couple articles about this, and they mentioned that they even with boxing, who has numbers to kind of that are correlative to this situation, and by that I mean they can get numbers and give you an idea of how many people are watching and tally the money and whatever. It takes them 4 months to tally the results, so we won't know for a while what this did. But they did say it was 10 times more than Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom did, and that was about 2 to 3 million on its first day, and then over the week it was 30 million, I think. So if it's going to do that kind of level, then we are looking at what you would argue is a hit, and it's already come out that Disney's saying Onward became a hit because it went to video on demand. It would not have been a hit if it didn't. So this could be the first kind of mini step towards the direction of more and more streaming stuff. Mike, what do you think?
I mean, I think that, we talked about this. I believe Shannon brought it up a few weeks ago when we talked about Trolls doing the video on demand release.
Yeah.
That Trolls was a sequel to a movie that did well, but not amazing. And that traditionally these animated sequels, the follow-ups like Life of Pets 2 and everything else don't do as well. So I think it was sort of a calculated risk in that I don't think that they ever assumed that Trolls 2 was going to make huge box office money. So this seemed like a safe way to kind of give everybody something and make some kind of return on your investment. Yeah. So I still don't know that it's going to, pave the way for the big budget movies to be released straight onto demand. I think people are still going to go to theaters, but as we've been saying for the past several weeks, the longer that we sort of live through this and go through everything that we're going through, I don't know that going back to normal, going back to the way things were 100% is ever going to happen. I think that when the entire world sort of drastically changes for 6 months or more out of the year in total, once we're done dealing with all of this, I don't know that you go back to normal. And I think some things will change. And I think the way that movies are released and the way that the relationship between streaming and traditional movie theaters is going to change. So I think it's interesting. And I think the other point you brought up about Onward is really good as well, that Onward, is doing okay. But had none of this happened and it had just stayed in theaters, it would have been a pretty modest success for Pixar.
Right.
But I think that doing what they did and releasing it, in addition to becoming a bigger financial success, in just talking to people that I know, it's like more people watched Onward than I think would have seen it in theaters. And I think the comfort of a Pixar movie, an emotionally satisfying Pixar movie that gives you the feels, particularly when you're trapped at home and dealing with all this, I feel like people are going to have a soft spot for Onward in a way that they wouldn't have had for a very long time. I think it's sort of elevated Onward to a Pixar classic in a certain way that it might not have been otherwise.
Yeah, totally agree there. And I mean, comparing Trolls World Tour's financial take, box office take, comparing it to Jurassic World, the sequel, is not It's not a perfect comparison because
that's fair because it had already been in the theater and it was going down for rent. That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it almost made $1 billion. I don't think it made $1 billion globally, but it had almost made $1 billion at that point. So anything on top of that, that was just frosting on the cake.
Right.
I do think families, especially when social distancing guidelines start to be relaxed, I do think families are going to be the most reticent to go back into these places. That it's going to take a longer time to get people in the theaters. But at the end of the day, Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, DC movies, you want to see those in a theater.
Yeah, true. But with Trolls World Tour, the other thing to think about too is you mentioned family, Shan. That's another thing to factor into these numbers because even if the numbers come back at a decent clip or a good amount, you're still gonna have to factor in the amount of money that you lost because paying one $20 fee for 5 members of a family is an extra $80 you didn't get from that family. And that's the thing that they're going to have to balance out money wise. Can they take the hits? And I was looking at this. I was thinking about this today, like for about an hour, just kind of breaking down, looking on the numbers. And I was like, okay, like there's a possibility down the road where this could be the norm. And if this is the norm, salaries start going down, actors' payments start going down, everything starts to adjust and maybe the cost of living in Los Angeles starts to go down. These kinds of things, it may be if there's any kind of silver lining they may come out of this thing, is that people are more responsible or financially responsible about situations down the road. We'll see. I mean, these astronomical sums that like America's Idol, whatever, $15 million a year to just watch people audition for you is ridiculous. Maybe those salaries now start getting dropped because people have to adjust. I mean, even the WWE today released like 15 wrestlers and a bunch of behind the scenes people, even though they were deemed an essential business. So even the people that are going to survive this thing are making cuts all over the place. So I wouldn't be surprised if down the road, if we start to have more of a streaming society, that the actors' fees, directors' fees, producer, all that kind of stuff just starts dropping. Mikey, you're the executive. Is that a possibility at all?
I mean,
you don't want to hear that, I know, because it's good. It's a good chunk of change for you, but like,
no, it's not that. It's just that I still think that probably entertainment is one of America's biggest exports.
Yeah.
And I think that, let me put it, look, I think that if anything, this whole situation has shown that there are a lot of people like teachers and healthcare workers who are getting paid less than they should be. And they absolutely deserve to be paid more than, actors, writers, directors, whatever. But I do think that the other way to look at it is entertainment in general is one of the things that's getting us through all of this and will continue to get us through this. And I don't know that the desire to entertainment, the desire for the public to sort of spend their money on entertainment, I don't think is going to go anywhere soon. So I think that it probably won't send things down that much, but it might adjust things, to your point. Like, I mean, like I said before, like, I don't know that we're ever fully going back to completely what we had before after this. So it'll be interesting to see how those changes affect the entire industry.
Yeah. I mean, it could work in reverse where it's, well, not necessarily in reverse, but it could be that, well, if you're going to a video, if you're going straight to video or video on demand, then you're only going to make a certain amount as an actor or director or producer or whatever, or writer, versus if your film is slated to go to a theatrical release. There'll be comparable changes to that situation. And there are now, but I think it'll be more stark as we start to realize that there's no chance for those films to go theatrically. Right. And then we'll see how that affects voting and changes to the Oscar stuff and Golden Globes and Emmys and things of that nature. How will that change as it goes along? So it's a good test case. We'll see what happens, but we won't know results for quite some time. And somewhere there is somebody coming up with a way to get these numbers way quicker, and they're going to be a millionaire overnight. If they can figure out how to break that system and get numbers quicker for people, somebody in Nielsen is like, how can I figure this out? Or finally I can implement this program, and we'll see. Okay, so let's move on to our second one, and that is these Dune pictures that came out from Vanity Fair. I'll put a couple of them up for people to enjoy. Kind of Star Wars-esque view. Boss Logic put a Kylo Ren lightsaber into Timothée Chalamet's hands in that photo there. There's also this photo here. We got a smoldering Oscar Isaac. Lord almighty.
Good Lord, I just fell out of my couch.
Look, I'm as straight as they come, and I bit my lip when I saw that picture. I'm not going to lie. It's a very good picture. These pictures are absolutely incredible. and they do tease the look and the vibe and the feel that this film is going to have. And I know I'm one of these people that's incredibly excited to see what Denis Villeneuve is going to create and have for us to enjoy and do. Look, there's a documentary about Jodorowsky's Dune that was going to come out in the 70s, which is a wacko awesome documentary. There was that 80s cult classic David Lynch film with Sting in a leather underwear or leather bikini briefs, and then you had the a sci-fi TV series that came out in the 2010s, I think, or early 2000s, that didn't quite capture it. But this is a master filmmaker in Denis Villeneuve who is approaching this thing and breaking it up over 2 movies. This is essentially it. Chapter 1, Chapter 2 all over again. And he's telling one half of the story in the first movie and the second half of the story in the second movie. And, they're filming in locations that are very reminiscent of Star Wars, Michael. It has that vibe. It has that feel. People have compared Frank Herbert's novel from the 60s to like the Roman Empire and influenced from all those things. And then it influenced Star Wars. It influenced Game of Thrones. It influenced these kinds of a lot of sci-fi afterwards. Do you like these pictures? I saw some people online saying it doesn't look like a fun movie. And it's like, oh, and so like, what is your opinion about all this?
I think the pictures are stunning. I think they look amazing. Particularly Oscar Isaac. I could look at more pictures of him. Just send those directly to me all day long. But no, actually, it's really funny because I saw the pictures. I got really excited. I never read Dune. My brother has read it. And he's been trying to get me to read it for quite some time. He loves it.
Yeah.
And I think like I have vague recollections of the 80s David Lynch film with Sting. And I think that's probably why I've sort of avoided Dune ever since. Like, right. I don't even fully remember the movie, but I just remember it being really, really weird. Not surprising, given that it's David Lynch. And so I think I sort of like have always sort of avoided Dune. And I saw the pictures. I thought they looked amazing. I started to read the article, and the article kind of starts to go into the story of what Dune is about. So I stopped reading it, and I actually picked up Dune yesterday, and I read like the first 50 pages. So I'm going to be reading it before the movie comes out. I'm really excited. But so the fact that these pictures got me so excited that I went and actually picked up the book and started reading it because it made me want to know who these people were now. Yeah. And I decided I wanted to go right back to the source material. I'm really stoked to read it. First of all, during our quarantine, because it's a really big book and it's going to take up a lot of time. And secondarily, I'm really excited for this. Arrival is one of my favorite movies. I think it's spectacular. And so I'm excited to see what he does here.
Yeah. Shan, what's your thoughts when you look at these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pictures, as Vogel said, the pictures are stunning. Any sort of sci-fi epic that is taking things sort of deadly seriously, as this seems to be, I'm always interested in something like that. I, like Mike, have also avoided Dune, but it's been more recently, and I think it's based off of watching that Jodorowsky documentary. Like I love a documentary about a movie that doesn't quite make it. Like when they did Lost in La Mancha with Terry Gilliam. I mean, that was such a fascinating documentary. And watching the Dune documentary and thinking like, wow, is this what Dune is? Not just that this is what this gentleman's take was, but this is what Dune is. I'm like, this is too bananas for me. I can't get on that. But knowing the work of Denis Villeneuve, I mean, I am not the biggest fan of Arrival nor Blade Runner, but I love Sicario.
Okay.
I think Sicario, I don't think he's made a better movie than Sicario. I think Sicario is fantastic.
Wow.
I know.
No, I mean, I'd have a hard time not agreeing with you. I do love Sicario, but I think it's kind of a three-way tie, depending on what day you ask me, between Blade Runner 2049, Arrival, and Sicario. Like, those three are just masterpieces in filmmaking, in my opinion, that didn't even get nominated by the Academy, which is effing mind-blowing.
I think so. I think they're all amazing movies in different ways. I think I don't have the love for Blade Runner 2049 that other people do, because I just don't have a lot of love for Blade Runner in general. I actually think Blade Runner 2040. I'm on the James Gunn track, given his tweets this week, that I do think Blade Runner 2049 is a better movie than Blade Runner, and I think it's one of the most gorgeous movies I've seen in a long time. It's a little bit too cold for me, but Arrival, which a lot of people feel is cold, I think is amazing. I think everything that Arrival is about is stupendous. It's one of my favorite movies. It blew me away in the theater. So I think that the bottom line is, out of those three movies, if that's his body of work going into Dune, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited across the board.
100%. And by my saying that I'm not a big fan of the Blade Runner sequel or Arrival, this is not me saying that it is a bad movie. It's just like, this one just didn't connect with me. I mean, I love the ideas behind Arrival. I think it was a fascinating watch, but by the end I was like, oh, okay, I don't need to revisit this one again. This is not me saying that it is bad. It just didn't click with me. Which we will talk about other movies that didn't necessarily click with me a little bit later.
I can feel my heart starting to. I'm getting ready for this Marvel debate already. Like, just getting mad over here.
It's getting verklempt. I'm getting agita.
I will never besmirch anyone for liking something. So when people say that they liked the Blade Runner sequel or Arrival, I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
You besmirch someone for liking Suicide Squad. Don't lie.
Don't lie, sir. Completely different. I think that's it. Okay,
you said
fair
never.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I will never besmirch someone when they like something that a lot of people like.
But I actually saw a great I saw a great meme. It was like a couple that was clearly at a restaurant, like breaking up. Like the girl was really upset and the guy looked angry with his arms folded. Yeah. And next to them was like a couple that was totally in love. And the broken up couple, it said Star Wars fans and Rise of Skywalker. And then the in love couple was like Dune fans, Dune Vanity Fair photos. Like, it was like, this is the Rise of Skywalker that we all deserved.
Yeah. We'll say, I mean, a lot of people who don't understand the chronology of this book and Star Wars are like, this looks like Star Wars, or this sounds like Star Wars. Like, no, sorry. Dune came first. Sorry, guys. Dune came first. 1965, I think, is when the book came out. So Dune came first. And there's an article that people are floating around on social media where Frank Herbert has some not nice things to say about what he felt Lucas took from his book and used for himself and made billions of dollars. So it's not like Herbert was struggling. So
I will say that, like, I mean, as someone who is a huge fan of like Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, like everything that is built into Star Wars, very specifically that George Lucas did with Hero's Journey, even in just reading the first 50 pages of Dune, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. I get, like, it has that Hero's Journey sort of classic mythological hero's tale written all over it from like the first 5 pages. You're like, okay, I got this. I'm in. So I'll let you guys know what I think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we'll all get into an early screening and do a review of it for the show. But I'm excited. It's supposed to come out December 18th. We'll see if it gets pushed. We don't know right now. I mean, they keep kicking SpongeBob one week. Like SpongeBob is like that little, what do they kick the can? They're just kicking it down the street until eventually they go, okay, fine, we'll do it in 2021. I think that's the barometer I'm using to see if any of these other movies afterwards end up getting pushed again. But it is possible. I think one of the great things too about this, real quick, and we'll move on, is that I like that he's changed the character, is it the archaeologist or the head of the head ecologist there on the planet? From a white man to a black woman. It's one of the actresses from Rogue One that excites me. And he's changed Rebecca Ferguson's character, which is the mom to Timothée Chalamet. She's more of a Linda Hamilton vibe type character, where she is training her son, getting her son involved in stuff because she has powers as well. And so that's going to be fun. And you've got Josh Brolin and Jason Momoa training this kid as well throughout the movie. So that's going to be awesome. And Batista is underneath Stellan Skarsgård, who's playing the Max von Sydow role from the original David Lynch film. And Villeneuve says in the Vanity Fair article, I'm making him more of a predator and less of just a crazy person, less of a madman, more of a predator. So there not a lot, but there are some, I think, interesting changes that update the material and make it fun to watch. But the question I have, and real quick, is if this doesn't do well financially, because Blade Runner 2049 did not do well. It's not like Villeneuve doesn't blow the doors off the box office financially. If this one does, if the first part doesn't do well, what happens to the second part?
Are they filming them consecutively? Like, are they filming them together?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I think he's only filming the first part, finishing up this part now, and then maybe getting into the second part afterwards.
Well, I mean, with like the Divergent series, for instance, they were scheduled to do 4 films, and after they were kind of getting the law of diminishing returns, after the third one, they were going to do the fourth one as, I think, like a limited run cable series. They were going to do it as like a Netflix movie or something. Right. But basically, yeah, there's no guarantee that you will see the conclusion of this story if the first one doesn't do what it needs to do at the box office. And based off the photos, and granted, these are still shots.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's going to be a cheap endeavor.
No. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think that's what I want. I think it'll still come out, and there's a possibility that film, the second film, is better than the first film. That's a possibility as well. More of the action, more of the culmination of everything that's being led up to will occur in that second film. And, you know, we've seen it in numerous trilogies, and I'm not saying Dune's a trilogy, but we've seen it in numerous trilogy where the second installment is a lot more action-oriented and interesting than the first installment. So that may be the case here as well. Either way, great cast. Looking forward to it. It's not much, like Shannon says, not much we can say. Just looking at the pictures, looks great. We'll see what happens down the road once we see the first trailer, once we hear the first reviews, first reaction, things of that nature. It'll be something to keep forward. All right, what do we got up next?
So up next, for the past couple weeks, because news has been light, Shannon's friend Rick came up with this idea of like get to know the Geek Buddies, because a lot of you guys who are listeners are big fans of The Outlaw, but thanks to him, you sort of checked out Geek Buddies and you got to know me a little bit better last week. You got to go know Shannon a little bit better the week before. We were talking about it, and we didn't think it was fair to just like not have John be a part of this. So we thought we'd take a minute here today to. You guys know The Outlaw, but do you really know John Roca? That's really the question. So we thought we'd dive into that. So Johnny, just I know we kind of brought this up when we were talking about it before, but I am curious, like what parts of your past, given the history that we all have together, do you feel like your fans aren't as invested in? Is it your time at the theater school at Florida State? Is it all of the fun trips and vacations we've taken together as friends, or what are the things that you think are sort of blind spots to your fans?
So your question to get to know me is, what do you think fans need to know? Is that what your question is to me?
I just know that you do mornings with The Outlaw. You do you do a lot. You talk a lot about your life. And so I think that where are the blind spots? I'm asking you.
I don't know, because I've been talking about my life for years. So I don't know where the blind spots would necessarily be. People know about my dad. People know about my girlfriend. People know about my military service. People know about my time at Florida State. People know that I went to Florida State. People know about, my time trying to act and then moving into this stuff. But yeah, and then people know about Wind Talkers for the most part. But I don't know. Just ask whatever you think you want to ask. I don't know. I'm wide open. I don't know what to say.
Shannon, you wanna dive in here?
Okay, okay. So Johnny, thinking about our adventures at Comic-Con.
Yes.
We found out this week that Comic-Con is probably going to be canceled, which is one tear down the cheek.
Right.
Johnny, Mike and I had been to Comic-Con before you. Yes. Mike had been way more before I had gone. But you and I discovered something that we really enjoyed doing together at Comic-Con. Why don't you? Two things, actually. Let me see. Give us what is one of your favorite Comic-Con stories that involves a hall or a restaurant?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I remember when I first was aware of Comic-Con, and then my friends were going and I wasn't being invited to go, or I wasn't like making it known that I wanted to go. I remember there was a discussion, shall we say that for lack of a better term, at a particular restaurant. I think it was Baby Blues, if I remember correctly. And there was like, well, do you want to go? Fine. We'll include you next time. You'll go. And I'm like, good, because I do want to go. And then we eventually became this like foursome that would go down every year. And it was a rotating fourth. And then it kind of became Kalinowski for the most part of the last few years. And then last year was the first time I didn't go, in quite some time. And to be honest with you, I was kind of good not to go. I'd kind of hit my limit about being there because there wasn't much happening, and it seems to be maybe possibly dying step by step, like slowly or in small ways dying, but or going back to what it was originally, which was focused on comic books and things of that nature. But being at Hall H, I think one of the greatest moments I had in any hall there at Comic-Con was the Shatner moment, like getting to getting up to go ask a question of William Shatner, who of course has blocked me on Twitter, but I will get up to ask him a question. And I got to tell him something I'd wanted to tell him for such a long time, was that he reminds me a lot of my father who passed away. The way he speaks, the way he carries himself, the hair, all of it was so reminiscent of my dad that I just felt such a connection to him as a person. And I got to ask him that question about why he thinks Captain Kirk endures. And he gave a great long-winded answer, which I won't go into here. But then, of course, being in the Hall H when that kid got stabbed when we were there all day with a pencil over a chair situation. Comic-Con is one of the great memories, one of the great moments of every year, because you just know you don't know what the memories are going to be, either with each other or with people in the hall or with people asking questions, because one of the greatest things that we turn into at Comic-Con is a Jerry Springer audience. I mean, we all, whoever walks up, we all are just immediately like, ooh, or ah, or great question, or oh, and we're jumping up and down in our chairs or things of that nature. So that's fun. But I also enjoy those smaller panels. Like getting to see the Doctor Who panels the last few years was great. Whenever I get to slide into a comic book panel, if I can actually get into one, it's great to hear people talk about their stuff. And being there when Azzarello, when all that stuff went down with the Killing Joke, I was just like, ooh, what is this? I remember the first, the Killing Joke was an interesting experience because we're all sitting there, and this slowly within the first 20 minutes, everyone is just kind of looking at each other like, is this, are you feeling the same way about this that I am? Am I missing something here? And then eventually when it actually kicks in, starting with the graphic novel, it is actually a damn good animated movie about that graphic novel. It's just those first 20 minutes like, what is going on here? And then having Azzarello, fair enough, and then having Azzarello like flip out on that woman afterwards was a whole bunch. She finally got the nerve to say the things that all of us had been thinking as we watched that first 20 minutes of that movie that were added. I thought was an interesting experience as well. But Comic-Con overall is a fun time. Sleeping with Shannon McClung in the same bed every year is an interesting experience. Wondering what time Mikey's going to come stumbling in drunk to pass out on the other bed is a great experience as well. I
was going to say that my favorite thing about Comic-Con, and this kind of leads to another thing I was thinking is the fact that John and Shannon, not just at Comic-Con, I think in every trip that we take together, sleep in the same bed.
Yes.
And I either sleep in my own bed or I sleep with whoever the fourth rotating person is. Mm-hmm. Says a lot about my personal life. But yeah, I think that one of my favorite things about Comic-Con, all told, all the panels, everything is that in the morning when everyone's kind of sleeping before we wake up, the thing that wakes me up every morning at Comic-Con is John and Shannon sort of starting in on this comedy act where they start giving each other shit with their eyes still closed about who took up too much of the bed or who took too much of the covers. And watching these two very straight, very heterosexual men bicker with each other is one of the internal joys of my life.
I'm not going to deny that. It's one of the most fun moments in the morning. I don't have to open my eyes, and I know I've got a great comedy partner in Shannon McClung. He can roll with anything. He's always on his toes, so it's great.
It also makes me realize, even aside from Comic-Con, I was bringing this up to somebody recently that we are all grown men. By any stretch of the imagination, we are all clearly well into adulthood, on our way to old age. Like, it's just, we're on the road.
Yes.
And yet when we go on vacations, whether it be Comic-Con or friends' weddings or trips with friends or whatever, we all still room with each other like we are college kids who can't afford a hotel room. And we're all at the point where we can afford hotel rooms. But we still have this thing where I think I remember, it might have been our friend Jen Fraser's wedding in New York was one of the first times where John and me and a couple other guys were all in a hotel room together. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a hotel room with the Outlaw, he is not a small man in stature or personality. It's a lot of a lot.
That's fair.
And over the years, we have sort of navigated the ins and outs of rooming together so well that I think we're probably just going to continue doing it all the way into the retirement home.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's gonna, in the end of the day, we'll do Geek Buddies 20 years from now in these retirement homes, or 30 years from now, at least, 40 maybe for me, hopefully. But yeah, not to give away too much of my age, but yeah, that's a certainly possibility. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the greatest things about it is like the discovery of what's going on down there and what you can enjoy. And the thing is, all three of us, and really all four of us, have our own separate ways of doing the con. And we do cross paths and go to dinner or go out to clubs or go to the parties or come back to the hotel room for that 2 o'clock nap or 2 o'clock recharge hour that we do with the air conditioner at 61 degrees. You know, it's great. It's great with the beds already made. Those are those. And we usually, thanks to Michael, we're usually really close to the con. So it's not a big deal to walk back to the hotel and relax a little bit.
Hey,
so
I know people. People.
you're kind of a big deal, and it helps us out overall. But yeah, I love those moments because we've gotten further and further, like we further and further do our own things as we go. But it's nice to have that hotel room as a touch point for all of us.
Well, and also the last couple of years, you've had to work, John. Like,
yeah, that's true. Actually, that's really fair. Yeah,
you've been down there in a professional capacity, so we would get to see each other at night. But like you and Kalinowski, I'll never understand your guys' love of walking the floor on Saturday at 2. It's like, oh God, no.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that. What has it been like for you? Like going from starting to get into the podcasting, starting to get into being sort of an online personality, and how has that shifted your enjoyment and experience of experiencing geek movies, experiencing Comic-Con, like experiencing all these things, from being someone who was just purely a fan and doing it for fun, who now has to do things professionally, go to screenings, your work, you're taking the thing that you've always loved and you've turned it into a job, which is kind of the dream and kind of amazing. But what is that process and what has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it was great. Initially, when I started doing it for the first year and a half, it was really a lot of fun to have access to these kinds of things and be sent to do these kind of things and cover these kinds of things. But I also found right before I got let go from Collider this past January, I found that I was losing my love of movies. Like I wasn't, because I was being forced to watch all this stuff to cover it and get on top of it. I didn't feel like I wanted to come home and watch a movie, right? It's like a chef. The last thing you want to do is come home and make dinner, right? And so I was starting to lose that. And that was really starting to scare me, to be honest with you, because I used to love like sitting around and putting on TCM or putting on whatever movie, or just flipping channels till I find a movie I want to watch and things of that nature. And I was losing that because so much of my life was being consumed by watching these movies and covering these movies and watching movies for the top 10, for the cinephiles, for these other things, for Geek Buddies a little bit and things of that nature. So it was becoming to me a chore. And it was taking away my love of movies. So this kind of starting the channel and doing whatever has kind of reawoken my enjoyment of entertainment and media and movies, because now I can cover it at my pace and what I want to cover and what I want to do. And I like that I have a little bit of control. And maybe at the end of the day, that's what it was all about, is I was being told what movies to cover when I want to cover the movies I want to cover. And of course, there's some that you're required to cover, but I do want to cover the movies I want to cover and create content around that. So yeah, initially it was absolutely great and I loved it. And it was weird to transition into that space. It was weird to get recognized at Comic-Con. That was also a weird situation overall.
You were always really, really great with that, John. Like when fans would come up and want to have a moment of your time.
Right.
I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but John is wonderful with his fans. Like he's so gracious. He's happy to take a minute, happy to take a photo. It's really one of those things.
Sometimes you might say he's better with his fans than with his friends.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Sometimes maybe we feel a little left out. Maybe we feel a little hurt. Maybe we feel a little lonely when you go off and embrace those that love you from afar. What about those that love you up close? What about those guys?
So if I can add one thing before we move on.
Yeah.
Going down to Comic-Con with Mr. Mike Vogel, like Mike Vogel gets recognized.
Yes, he does.
Professionally.
Yeah, don't let him fool you. He does.
A lot of people want to stop and have a moment with Vogel. And if all four of us are going someplace, the other three are happy to wait.
Yep.
And then the last few years, it started to do this. where people started stopping John. And the most recent year when John was there, we were having to stop for John, maybe a little bit more than Mike. And I remember Vogel
100% more for sure.
Vogel turning to me and Kalinowski and being like, "Huh, so this is what that's like."
Oh, is that the Kingdom Come moment? So that's what that feels like. Yeah, I mean, look, that's been great. It's been nice to have those moments. And look, I know people will think I've got it, and I do. I have an ego. I have a belief in myself. That's how I can achieve things. I try to achieve things rather, but when it comes to fandom or fans or people or followers, and I really like to say followers, I'm just always humbled by it all. I'm always overwhelmed by it all because I don't think I'm where I need to be in the fandom. So I'm always appreciative of the people who do follow me, who do appreciate my point of view and or how I look at things or my analysis of things. So when they're willing to stop me and have a conversation with me, I always am appreciative of that because that can go away at any time. And it's always great to have people who you have no idea who they are, or they've commented on you, or on social media or whatever, to actually get to meet them up front. That's been one of the greatest things about the channel as well, is bringing those people in live during some of my shows to come on camera live and ask their questions. Like last night, I had Ben Bateman as my guest. As we're recording this, last night I had Ben Bateman as my guest on Outlaw Nation. A few people came in live who had never met him, and I got to put them on, and we all talked, that kind of stuff. So I'm very interactive with the channel, and that's the approach I want to have with my brand, is a very interactive brand, because I don't have a fear of it. Christian mentioned that one day on SEN Live. He's like, aren't you afraid that it might make bad radio to bring people in? And I'm like, no, because I can always talk to anybody. It drives my girlfriend crazy, because I'll have a conversation with a person when we're ordering the drive-thru in Starbucks, and it drives her nuts. She's like, just say what you want and get it and go. And why do you have to go? So how's your day going? What's going on with you? But I just like to talk to people in that way. And so when I get the chance to it's always humbling. Honestly, I know it's always humbling. I'm never going to deny that. I'm never going to say anything other than that. Can I be egotistical at times? Absolutely. I'm never going to deny that. But I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah, thanks. And then he wonders why I spend time with the fans instead. But like when they come up and say hi, I like to take the time to make them feel welcome, because a lot of them always come up to me later and go like, I was afraid to say anything to you. And I was like, well, why? What have been your experiences with other people that you'd be afraid to come up and say hi? So I always like it, because it feels like, hey, someone's watching your stuff. And as I'm building this channel, it means even more. So yeah. All right. Anyway, yeah. Is that it? Is that good? That's good. Okay, good. That's good. It's a good place to end, I think. Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll jump into our main topic and tear apart Shannon McClung's MCU list. And we'll be right back right after this. Oh, my back. And we're back. I think that's a good way to go into it. Shannon, you've been doing this MCU rewatch. For those of you who don't follow Shannon, he's there you go, Shannon_McClung on Twitter. Go and follow him there. He has been doing an MCU rewatch of all 23 movies. He just finished it, and then he released his rankings. Actually, why don't you tell us what inspired you to do this, and then we'll talk about we'll show your rankings, and we'll discuss it. Well, did you do chronological? Did you do release date? Like, what was give us the whole? I did release dates. I wanted to do release date because that's how we would have seen them when we were watching them in the theaters. That makes sense. But basically, when it seemed like we were gonna be shutting down for a little bit and having to stay home for a little bit, it was like, God, I think it's going to be more than 3 weeks, and really, you just need 3 weeks and 2 days to do the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and trying to establish a little bit of a schedule. Like, to me, the Marvel movie at the end of the day, that was sort of like my reward. I try to do a little bit of work. I try to do a little bit of writing. I'd like to go for a walk, but I wanted to have something scheduled. Like, all right, at the end of the night, I do this. Yeah. So that is where this idea came from. And then I figured, throw it up on Twitter and have people tell me that I'm wrong. What was there? Was there a desire?
Who would ever do that? Who would ever agree with you?
We get into it.
What was your desire to do the MCU? Like, what inspired you to do this? Was it just to pass the time? Were you inspired to want to revisit these films because you'd been wanting to for quite some time, and now the time came for you to be able to do that? And why did you limit to one movie a day? Did you want to just be able to savor it for 24 hours and then move on to the next one?
It was a combination of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not a Bond guy, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe has the most movies out there that you can do kind of like one after the other. And there were certainly times where I would finish a movie and I would just want to watch the next one. But that's why I chose to do one movie a night. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Mikey, any last things, or should we bring this list up?
So we Shannon finished last night, and today on Twitter, as we're recording this today, he posted his list. And as we were discussing what we wanted to cover this week, and we had such a good time last week, sort of covering the X-Men franchise and what the X-Men movies had meant to us. This seemed like a good follow-up to that because everybody loves a list and everybody loves to duke it out. And I think there's some really questionable choices here that are worthy of a discussion.
Yeah, well, let's take a look here. Right here, there he is. He started out by not even putting any numbers next to these, so you could just guess which ones. I'm assuming he went in order. Number 1 for him is Avengers Endgame. Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. Number 3, Captain America Winter Soldier. 4, Guardians of the Galaxy. 5, Captain America Civil War. 6, Iron Man. 7, Avengers. 8, Thor Ragnarok. 9, Black Panther. 10, Spider-Man Far From Home. 11, Captain America the First Avenger. We're going to have words about that. 12, Ant-Man. 13, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. 14, Spider-Man Homecoming. 15, Doctor Strange. I'm getting angry as I read this list. 16, Avengers The Age of Ultron. 17, Thor The Dark World. 18, Ant-Man and the Wasp. 19, Iron Man 3. 20, Thor. 21, Captain Marvel. 22, The Incredible Hulk, the one with Ed Norton. And 23, Iron Man 2. So that is his list. I wanted to read it out for those who are listening to us on the podcast format. So let's go back to the three of us and thoughts on this list.
Well, all right. First of all, like I don't know, Johnny, about your feelings. I do feel like I have Endgame as my number 1 and Infinity War as my number 2 as well. I don't know how you don't just kind of say that's the culmination of everything.
Okay.
Now, what is the choice? Because I know not all of our friends agree with this, so I'll go to Shannon. Why Endgame number 1 and Infinity War number 2?
It's the conclusion.
Yeah,
that's why. Because it's the conclusion. As much as I love Infinity War, there was, and I think probably Infinity War was probably the more difficult film to pull off because you have so many more balls that you're juggling. But just all of these moments that have been built up for 23 movies or 22 movies at that point, excuse me. Thor or Captain America lifting the hammer, for instance. I mean, figuring out how the heroes were all going to come back, seeing all of these heroes side by side by side by side by side. Seeing the splash page that we've talked about when the good guys are running at the bad guys. That's when you get the most epic stuff that has happened in the MCU. That is why Endgame is above Infinity War for me.
Wow.
Okay. Johnny?
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have put Endgame at number 1. I'm sorry, I wouldn't have put Infinity War at number 2. I certainly I like Endgame at number 1. I still think Winter Soldier is one I would argue about being either 1 or 2. That's kind of my argument there. So I'm not going to fault you for putting Endgame up there because it certainly would contend on my list. But I would put Captain America Winter Soldier above Avengers Infinity War. Guardians of the Galaxy, don't mind it at number 4. Surprised you have Civil War at 5. Civil War has some issues when I watch it now that I didn't feel the first time when I watched it. And certainly Avengers would go way farther down on my list. On a recent rewatch, I found myself kind of bored and kind of picking through the dialogue a little bit and finding it a bit cheesy. But Doctor Strange, I think, is the shock to me that's that far down on your list. Because to me, Doctor Strange is one of the top 5, top 10 MCU movies. And I know it's a divisive film because there are some people who absolutely agree with me and there are some people who don't. But Doctor Strange to me is one that is incredible.
Why do you think Doctor Strange is so high up on the list?
Why I would put it on my list?
Yeah.
I think because I enjoy the fact that this is a cerebral superhero film. It is not about the action, right? There are action moments, certainly Tilda Swinton, certainly Chiwetel Ejiofor, Mads Mikkelsen, and of course Cumberbatch, all having their like astral plane battles are interesting. But it's more about like, what are you going on in your journey, your own personal journey, your own emotional, mystical journey to discover about yourself, beyond the human realm. Where is it you're going, so that you can be this kind of master of the mystic arts and things of that nature? How do you get there? And I think that's what I enjoy about him, the Eastern philosophy approach, which is something that I've kind of gravitated to in my life. How does he go about doing that? The conversations with Tilda Swinton's character, those conversations are really interesting to me to explore. And the fact that the ending is not the standard, hey, the reverse Doctor Strange, I got to beat the reverse Doctor Strange. It is actually more of a trick, and you're doing this thing over and over. You're browbeating this person with just your mind. You trick this person with your mind and the stone of turning the time and making him repeat over and over and over again this situation. And I thought it was kind of a brilliant ending to this. The problem with it is the Rachel McAdams storyline, and that's probably a reason why she's not coming back, because she's like, there's not much to do here. I don't want to come back to something that wasn't much to do. And I respect that. Rachel is a damn good actress and deserves better material. So I understand her approach to it. And who knows, maybe she'll come back like Natalie Portman down the road. But for now, her stepping out of this, I don't have a problem with it. But I enjoy their chemistry. It just, there needed to be more flesh on those bones for that storyline. But overall, I like the idea. I like Wong. He's very funny. I like Mads Mikkelsen in his role. I do enjoy Chiwetel Ejiofor and the twist that happens. And of course, Tilda Swinton is just incredible. That scene where they're on the balcony before she's about to die, and they have that conversation, to me is the crux of the movie. And it just attracts me every single time to watch it. It's one of the few MCU movies I actually own.
Well,
wow.
And also, let me add here that in between, this is a constantly moving list.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, based off of how I'm feeling, what's going on. And also, in between some of these films, it's millimeters of difference. Now, I really enjoyed Doctor Strange, but I do think, they pushed their production schedule to accommodate Benedict Cumberbatch. I feel like his American accent is a little grating at times.
I won't deny you that. Yeah,
I feel like he settles into it much better in Ragnarok and in Infinity War. But I do really like Doctor Strange. It's just that the other movies, on this particular day that I made this list, after watching all of them in a row, that's where they landed.
I will say as an overall, kind of to your point, what's a lot of fun about a list like the Marvel movies is that it's kind of like making a list of your favorite Pixar movies. Like, the level of quality is so high throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe until you get to the bottom there, that I think that it's a list of heavy hitters. So to your point, there is going to be little millimeters of change. I think one of my big differences, kind of to Johnny's point with the Doctor Strange, my list, my top 5 or 6 is about the same as yours, with the exception of the fact that I have Black Panther up there. So I have Endgame, Infinity War, Winter Soldier, just like you do. But then I have Black Panther, Civil War, Guardians. So I like our top 5s are the same, except I put my Black Panther goes way, way higher than it does for you. And Johnny, I'm not sure where Black Panther is on your list.
I would see it's in the bottom 5 for sure. I would actually put Ragnarok as my 4th film. I love Ragnarok, and I think it actually exceeds Guardians of the Galaxy. I enjoy Ragnarok more than Guardians of the Galaxy, but like Shannon said, it's millimeters more. It's barely just that little bit more. It's one I own, and it's one I go back to and watch over and over and over again. The humor never stops being funny for me. For me, the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think Kalinowski is valid. A dance off, like it makes sense with what they've laid out for sure. But still, the idea of a dance off, it's a little bit controversial.
I love it.
I get it. Well, it's like I enjoy the Iron Man 3 twist. I love that the Mandarin is a character they've made up and created by the media or whatever they do there. I like that idea, but a lot of people hate it. So
Well, and now we're going to get our real Mandarin in Shang-Chi.
Exactly, if it ever comes out.
if it ever comes out. Now, I have my bone of contention that I want to dive in here with.
Yeah.
But I know that, Johnny, you had said you had opinions on Captain America being as high as it was.
No, yeah, the first Avenger, I think it should be higher, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that movie. I stand for that movie. I will fight for that movie. People are like, oh, the third act, or what? I don't understand why people don't like it. I hear their reasons. I can accept their reasons, but I don't see what they see, because I thoroughly enjoy that movie from front to back. It never bores me. I never get tired of it. And I love the earnestness of Chris Evans' performance in this character, from I Could Do This All Day when he's a skinny kid to later on when he's the big beast. I know that Matt Nost's big problem with it is that he's all of a sudden can run and dive and swim and whatever after he comes out of that serum, after he gets the serum and comes out of that contraption. But I think that's part of a superhero movie. It's like, okay, he's got this skills. He's always had the ability to do things. And now his body matches his mind and he can go and do these things and is incredible. And I think the relationship with him and Haley Atwell is fantastic throughout the latter half of the movie as well. And Red Skull is pretty scary. He's more scarier than Marquand made him in Infinity War or Endgame. So I like that Red Skull a lot with Hugo Weaving overall. So that's why I think it should be higher. And it feels like Superman. It feels like Donner's Superman in nowadays. That's my opinion.
The two things that kept it down for me, because I agree, I think the Steve Peggy romance is one of the purest things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think Chris Evans, especially considering his body of work leading up to that movie, that he played wise asses the whole time. And the fact that he was able to come in and play this earnest guy that you believed, I mean, and this is a combination of the special effects and his performance, but you believed he was that little guy. The thing that keeps it down is the curse is the curse of the montage. I wasn't a big fan of the Act 2 montage. And also, I think they really fumbled the ball with Bucky. That you needed that moment between the two of them.
On the train, you mean?
Yeah, on the train. Like, I don't feel like I feel like that should have been, because Peggy talks about like it was Bucky's choice. It's like, you don't get that. You don't get that Bucky let go. It's like Steve, he slipped. And I think it should have been a choice for Bucky, that he should have said, and they actually did this in one of the animated Avengers films, in the same moment where Bucky says to Cap, the world needs you more than me. And he lets go. Wow. See, I think what they did, even though like it's set up and I think he gets redeemed, I think that was a little bit of a fumble, and that's why it's down there.
I think they fumbled with the guys. What are the guys? His crew?
The Howling Commandos.
The Howling Commandos. I think they messed. I would have liked to have seen more with them, because you cast someone like Neil McDonough, and you don't give him more to do than a few scenes. I think that's I think that's a fumble overall. What about you, Mike? What's your thoughts on it? I've talked enough about this. What about you?
Captain America is only a couple higher on my list just because of some other things that went up there, but I did put it higher. I kind of agree with both of you guys. I love Captain America. I think it is 100% gives me all the Richard Donner Superman vibes. And I think in the good ways and the bad ways. Like, we all love Richard Donner Superman. We're all big fans of it. But when you go back and watch it now, especially in the world we live in today, there's definitely cheesy moments. You can say the exact same thing about Donner Superman that you say about Captain America. Christopher Reeve comes in and plays this earnest guy to a T. You 100% believe in him. The relationship between him and Margot Kidder is perfect. I love every moment of it. Seeing him just be Superman and go around and inspire people 100% works. And then for me, the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor stuff is really kind of funny and Gene Hackman-y, but doesn't, the whole plot at the end, it's kind of like, okay, I guess. And he like spins back time and it's kind of cheesy. Just the way that Captain America has the montage and stuff like that. So I think neither movie is perfect, but both of them are so well intentioned, and I will always have a soft spot for Captain America for that reason. I think that what's great about the Captain America trilogy before you lead into Infinity War Endgame is that even though they do fumble the ball with Bucky in the first Avenger, the bringing him back as Winter Soldier in Winter Soldier works so well, and Captain America being that hero out of time in the second movie works so well, and then leading that into Civil War and having Avengers kind of 2.5, but kind of grounded in Cap's refusal to give up on Bucky. Even though they fumbled Bucky at the beginning, they definitely like stuck the landing with him moving forward, which was great. Now I want to talk about Shannon's janky list. I don't understand why Spider-Man Homecoming is so far down the list.
That's fair.
And so far below Far From Home, because although I agree that Far From Home is an exceptional movie as well, and even though I know that I think Homecoming is better, and I know that Shannon thinks Far From Home is better, I do not understand the distance between these and why Homecoming is so far down there, which is just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, to say that it is so far down there is not entirely accurate because Far From Home is 10. Homecoming is 14. There are 3 movies in between there. Now, I know you probably have more of an issue with the movies rather than the placement.
But I agree. But I think what Michael's trying to say is you start Homecoming in the beginning of the films you don't like. It's the top film that when you start going into the films that you clearly do not like, it is the one that starts that whole descent. And so Mikey doesn't like that. That's the gatekeeping movie to go into the descent.
Look, you got Spider-Man Homecoming, and then you go to Doctor Strange, which we all agree is a good movie. Then you go to Ultron, Thor: The Dark World. Homecoming is 3. It's 2. There's 2 movies between Homecoming and Thor: The Dark World.
Well, as we have said before, I like Thor: The Dark
World. This is great.
But when I first saw Homecoming, because I remember we went to go see it at the Dome, at the ArcLight, and part of this was the experience. There was a guy 2 rows behind us coughing. He coughed the whole movie to the point that our geek buddy...
He was patient 0. He had the corona.
COVID-18 or whenever it came out.
It's COVID-18.
As you know, they're in order. They're sequential, apparently. I'm not going to mention any names.
But that was one of the... I did not enjoy that experience because this dude was coughing the whole time. And rewatching it, I was not experiencing the twist in the right environment. I mean, the twist with Michael Keaton is amazing. It's so good. But the third act for Homecoming just doesn't bring it home for me. I think it's good. I think it's fine. But ultimately, where it stumbles, I feel like Far From Home just knocks it out of the park. Now, I'm also partial to the spectacle and the action and the action sequences, which, John and Mikey, I know you guys appreciate that stuff, but John's a little bit more, he's the theme guy. Mike is the story guy. The Mysterio sequences in Far From Home, who would ever have thought that they could have pulled that off? Stuff that they used to do in a comic book, that they were able to pull that off so well in the film. Whereas the action in Homecoming is fine. It's good. It's fine. I love the Tony Peter dynamic in Homecoming. I really love the Peter Happy dynamic in Far From Home. I think it's so the scene on the jet is just so heartbreaking. I mean, it's so good. That is why Homecoming is where it is, or that's why it is below Far From Home.
I have Homecoming as number 7. I have Far From Home as number 23. I'm just kidding. No, it's not. I actually love Far From Home.
I'm in your camp though, Mike. I'll take Homecoming over Far From Home. Yeah. Homecoming
is number 7 and Far From Home is number 11. So there are 3 movies between them for me too. We reversed it. You are correct. It's degrees. Everything that you love about Far From Home, I also love about Far From Home. The scene with Happy and Peter on the jet makes me cry. When Happy looks at Peter and sees that he is a young Tony Stark, it gets me every time. Yeah. Mysterio's amazing. It's all good. I think for me, post Civil War, where Peter Parker was so much fun, reestablishing Peter in his life, in his world, and kind of trying to find the balance of a story that still felt like a fun Peter Parker Spider-Man origin story that built on everything you had established in Civil War and the current Marvel universe. Yeah. I think they just nailed everything. I think opening it up post the Battle of New York with Adrian Toomes sort of as in the role that he is Michael Keaton's role, kind of collecting the Chitauri artifacts. It was such a brilliant way to give him way bigger, more interesting story. To your point, the twist that he was Liz's dad came out of nowhere in the best way. It was amazing. Michael Keaton in the car with Peter and Liz, where he figures out that Peter is Spider-Man, is one of the coolest sequences. It's amazing.
Great show.
And in addition to all of that, just all the way that it feels like a John Hughes movie, the way they made Peter Parker's life and school and everything so funny, so humorous. The little things like Captain America doing the PSAs for the PE teacher, like in 1,000 little ways. Not only did they really do a great job, obviously the Tony Peter relationship is so well done. They didn't overuse Iron Man. He was used in the right amount. Like it all just works so well. And it's such a clear, concise, contained, strong story. I think they just nail it. And I think with Far From Home, picking up after Endgame, having Peter deal with the death of Tony, everything he's dealing with, taking it on an international trip, like they do a great job. It's all awesome. Like it's an amazing, amazing sequel because it in its own right stands as a great movie. I just think you've got to give props to Homecoming for setting it all up. And I think that some of the jokes with like with the teachers in Far From Home kind of fall a little flat. I think that Far From Home has its sort of weak points as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think you're 100% wrong about Homecoming being that far down on the list. As the beginning of your Marvel movies that you don't like, I think you're 100% wrong and a terrible person and a horrible human being.
Agreed. What are the 3 movies in between Homecoming and Far From Home for you?
All right. The 3 movies so Homecoming is number 7. I kind of told you that I had Endgame, Infinity War, Winter Soldier, Black Panther, Civil War, Guardians as my top 6. Homecoming is number 7. Then the first Avengers is number 8. So I do have it higher than I think Johnny would put it.
Yeah, I'd put it down.
Captain America is number 9, the first Avenger. And then Ragnarok is 10. And then Far From Home is 11.
Okay.
Wow. I was told not to make a list, and little did I know these two made a list on their own. So
no, you know what I did? I had made a list. I had made a list months ago, and I went and looked at it, and I made a few tweaks to it. I as a super nerd, I have in my notes my list of Marvel movies in the order I put them in because it comes up so often with the people we hang out with that I just kind of always have it at the ready to discuss for things like this.
Well, I'm sure there's a top 10 MCU episode on the top 10 podcast, so you can go and listen to that or watch that when you see my list. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like looking at your wait, let me bring up your list real quick. I know we got to wrap up, so let me bring up your list real quick. What I would change here. Yeah, I mean, like you look at, I think Black Panther would probably stay where it's at. I don't have a problem with Black Panther being down. I would move Avengers down to maybe 17 or 18. I just don't. Yeah, I rewatched it on the plane back from London, and I was just like, this is kind of boring. And I was just kind of surprised at how much I found it to be cheesy. And to be fair, this is Joss Whedon, and maybe I just don't gravitate to his stuff as powerfully as I would even argue. It's just a shade above Ultron for me now in retrospect, because I think there are things with Ultron that are more enjoyable to watch now as we see the progression of this idea of wanting to get into people's lives with technology and surveil people and things of that nature. And the fear that I have of AI taking over the world, it kind of plays into it, in my opinion. I do agree with you with Ant-Man and the Wasp, as much as I hate to admit it. I tried to fight for that film really hard because I do enjoy Hannah John Kamen in the film. I do enjoy Lawrence Fishburne's stories in the film. I think overall it kind of shows you that the Ant-Man, it's weird when you have a sequel to a film that shows you that you don't even need the main character in its own franchise. That's a scary line to walk with Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I don't disagree. Pretty much all those films that are down there in your bottom 8, bottom 7, except for Doctor Strange, I would argue I agree with for the most part. And Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah. So all those, I don't think there's only a shade of difference in some of the rankings. If I was to do my list compared to what you did, there's only like 2 or 3 I think I would move around in that order, and yeah, in that way. So, but it's a good list. It's a great list, and I envy you.
So not so terrible a person.
No, that's a terrible person. I would not go in that.
Debatable.
I mean, Michael's I think more terrible for Avengers in top 10. That's ridiculous, especially for a story guy. So
you know what it is. I'll tell you why. Especially because I kind of did this. I have not been doing Shannon sort of let's go through the Marvel movies. But I knew that he was doing it, and I think it was like 2 weekends ago. I was looking through Disney Plus, and I was like, oh, I really haven't watched Avengers, the first one, in a long time, and I put it on. And look, I agree with you. I think it does kind of veer into some cheesy territory. I think it's not a perfect movie by any stretch. And definitely as the spectacle has grown, with these movies, it feels a little small in some ways. Whereas I know that when we all saw it in the theater for the first time, it was like the biggest thing. Oh my God, I can't believe they're all together.
Yeah,
it has
totally.
cheesy moments, but I think it really holds together nicely as a fun movie where you see all these characters bounce off of each other. Like, to Shannon's point with Endgame, we now live in a world where we've seen every Marvel hero fight together in the portal scene in the biggest way ever. But there's a charm to Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America fighting each other for the first time, like right after they capture Loki. And there's kind of a fun to the way that all the characters don't get along and don't bounce off, like kind of rub each other the wrong way. Like there's a lot of like fun little moments in Avengers that really work well, that I kind of keep it up high because it kind of, that was the first big Marvel payoff too. I think I have a soft spot for it, but I do agree with you. Like then I kept kind of watching. So I've been sort of picking the Marvel movies I want to rewatch. And I also rewatched Ultron, which I don't think I've watched maybe even since the theater.
Yeah.
And it definitely does suffer out of all the Marvel movies from being, it feels the most like a big sequel where they tried to do too much. Like there's a lot going on, and I think it does get a little over the top. But James Spader as Ultron is still a joy to watch. Yeah. And watching Scarlet Witch come into it, like I really kind of got really into Hawkeye has that moment with her in Sokovia when they're near the end where they're all battling it out. And he kind of has that moment where he's like, you can stay in here and be safe and I'll protect you. But if you step outside, you're a hero. And just seeing where Scarlet Witch has gone, especially through Infinity War and Endgame, and being excited for WandaVision, her hero moment really affected me in a big way. So I think there's some really nice moments in Age of Ultron that get overlooked as everybody kind of looks at it as like the bad sequel. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. I think that the best thing about this list is I think Shannon was onto something. And I think if people are at home and bored, kind of going back through the Marvel universe, it makes you rethink a lot of the movies that you thought you loved or you thought you didn't like, and you kind of see things in a different way.
Yeah, it certainly might be an inspiration for me to do the same thing for my Patreons on my Patreon. It'd be like 1 week, one time, one week, one movie for a watch along every week, doing one of the 23 movies as a watch along, and kind of revisit as an excuse to revisit them and do something with that content in that way. So I like that overall. So kudos to you, Shannon, for being disciplined enough to watch these and watch one a day and not jump into the next one. Actually take your time through it. So it speaks volumes. So you got to respect your list, whether Michael thinks you're a bad person or not. I think
I don't think, you know what? I don't think you're a bad person. I actually give you a lot of props. It takes a lot of guts to put such a horrible list like this out on Twitter.
There it is.
It's a lot of you got a lot of stuff, kid. You got a lot of stuff.
Some of our friends are chiming in saying I'm wrong, and some people that I'm not friends with are chiming in saying I'm wrong. So
welcome to the game, man. That's the way it works in the MCU. Don't mess around with that. Oh, and also Iron Man 3 should be way higher on your list. You're ridiculous. And that's the other one I'd have an argument about as well. I like Iron Man 3 a lot. But I think the buddies don't agree with me, but I'll say that.
I will say that even with Incredible Hulk, like looking at Shannon's list and kind of comparing it to I think that with the exception of Iron Man 2, which maybe I need to revisit, I think every one of these movies has stuff that you can really enjoy in it. I think Iron Man 2 is at the bottom of the list for a good reason. Yeah. I think Shannon spoke about this when we talked about it a few weeks ago, that Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow in their relationship is still a lot of fun, but I think Iron Man 2 is kind of like meh, whatever. But Incredible Hulk has some fun moments. Captain Marvel, I love how they handled the Skrulls. I really like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I like Annette Bening. Like with each one of these movies, I think that there's stuff that you can pull out, which when you look at what Marvel has accomplished in their 23 movies over a decade, the fact that we can look at all of these movies and even down to the last 3 or 4, we're still in the I really like this movie, but category is really impressive.
Yeah, agreed. And that's incredible. Yeah, impressive. That's a perfect way to end that. All right, well, thank you all so much. We have gone way over time, and I appreciate you all putting up with it, but I think you're enjoying it because it's a discussion about Marvel movies. I'm sure you've got your strong opinions, and you've debated these with your friends and debated your friends' lists ad nauseum as well. It's a fun thing to do here now that we're all self-isolated, self-quarantining. It's fun to have these debates and these discussions. Hell, James Gunn put up 2 tweets talking about the best sequels that he thought, in his opinion, and people went crazy over that. So it's a fun conversation to have.
By the way,
yeah,
I'm with James Gunn on the Gremlins 2 bandwagon.
You're
We'll talk about that next time.
You're insane. You're insane. Hulk Hogan's in that film, and I still wouldn't put it over Gremlins. You're an insane person. But I will go with him that Alien and Aliens are essentially tied. I will agree with that 1,000%. One is a real art house film. The other one is a fun popcorn fest. All right, so that's my personal. All right, so anyway, let's move on. Let's shut this thing down. We got to go. I want to thank you all so much for downloading this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to us on the podcast feed. It means so much to us as we put this thing together every week and have some fun reconnecting with each other and talking about it. I mean, we use it as an excuse to see each other anyway. This is now even more of an excuse because we've been self-isolating and self-quarantining to be able to see each other. So in a way, it's kind of a gift that keeps giving back to us every week as well. What do we want to say, Shannon?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow the Geek Buddies on social media, on Twitter, it's at geek_buddies, on Instagram at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to tell me I'm wrong and follow me on social media, it's at Shannon_McClung on Twitter, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to tell people that I'm right, you can follow Mike Vogel at MKToon. If you'd like to tell John that you think I'm just a great guy, you can follow him at the Roca Says. I kind of ran out of steam at the end.
Yeah, you're there. You're almost there. To be fair, we've been talking for an hour and 22 minutes. Mikey, what do you got?
All right. Well, listen, we've been talking a lot about lists today. So if you're going to make a list of things that you should do after this podcast, number one, you should rate us and leave comments wherever you're listening. If you're watching us right now on YouTube, just leave a comment below, subscribe to Johnny's page. If you're listening to us on Anchor or Spotify or iTunes, rate us, star us, leave comments. And then number two, you should share us. So retweet us, post us on Facebook, tell people that if they love geeky stuff, they should be checking us out. And then number three, you should definitely go to the Twitter page and use the hashtag ShannonIsWrong/horrible in any of the comments that you leave us. And if you do those things, then we're all great. Everything's fine.
You can't put a slash in the hashtag. It'll go away. But
well, then hashtag Shannon is wrong. Hashtag Shannon is terrible. Just depending on your tweet. Just depending on the tweet.
Fair. The horrible, terrible, no good list. I respect that. All right. Well, there we go. Thanks, everybody, for watching this episode of Geek Buddies. And we'll see you next time on the
Geek
Buddies. Hey!